So, hey everyone, I wanted to do kind of a build report on Sapling. It's basically launched, kind of launched it this week on LinkedIn and Product Hunt, and I have a lot of friends who do some of these really long trail runs, and then when they get done with these big trail runs, they do a run report. And it's really cool because they kind of break down everything they did and the struggles and the things they would do differently to try to help other runners get to that level and so on. It's good for hobbyists like me to kind of read and go, oh, that's a pretty cool experience. So I thought I would do similar with the sapling build, kind of a build report. So yeah, it's a little bit unstructured, but yeah, just kind of want to talk through how sapling came to life. Today sapling, just in general, is a online fundraising tool that lets you upload videos in a kind of a TikTok or Instagram style format where you can record videos, you can layer them in as kind of a feed, you can receive donations, and then we do what's called a giving grid. And the giving grid can have 100 squares or it can have 250 squares or 50 squares. And the goal is that people will click and make a donation to to be a part of the fundraiser, and then clear the grid, so to speak. In the admin, you have the ability to set up your grid. You can add prizes underneath specific squares. So, like for instance, I have if I go to my prizes tab, I can see that I have like the 50th and the yeah, it takes a while to load. Every time I do a screen recording, everything slows down on my computer. But anyway, I've got sweatshirts that I've added under amount 45 and 50. Well, how did this get started? Back in the day, and so in 2012, I wrote this kind of really basic. I wish I still had a screenshot of it. My wife had said that she wanted to do, a giving tree for a nonprofit. I forget what it was, and we were going to do this for, we were going to turn it into an electronic version because historically you would take these like cards or squares, you put them on the wall, and people would pick a card, and then that would be their donation, and then eventually you empty all the cards. And so I put that online, really basic. I mean, it was super ugly, but it was functional and it worked. We did it one off kind of thing. And then I thought, this could be something. But it never really materialized. I got busy with some other stuff. I was a freelancer at the time, and I was working on ClickBid, which is the project that I've spent most of my career on. And about 2015, I said, what, let's give this a shot. So we created Sapling in about 2015, and used it for just a small number of nonprofits. It was really meant to be for small fundraising. So if you're a small startup nonprofit, you just need to get something set up, low cost, easy to use, and you just get it running. And that was what it was. And I obviously in 2015 I hand rolled it. PHP, MySQL. It's hard to if I look at the code base, you can see. I mean, it's still a lot of remnants of it. If I go to yeah, this is a blast from the past. If anybody has ever written code, before, like in the early days, you would have a functions file and you would just build procedural code. I mean, I have all these functions, extract YouTube ID, get BG, show logo, and then there's no object oriented whatsoever. And I'm not a formal programmer. I'm more of a hacker, and I just I see what I want to build. I'll do these sketches on my Remarkable. These are some new products ideas that we're doing with ClickBid right now, and that's really and then I'll just try to build it. And the thing for me historically is code's always gotten in the way. Like, I know what I want to build. Now I just need to find the code to build it and figure this out. And so fast forward. Well, actually, before I fast forward, in 2015, it didn't really take off. I didn't put any real time into it and marketing and all that stuff. But so I just kind of let it go, and I put it on the shelf, made a backup of it, and then last year little over a year ago, I said, you know what? I really think I'm trying to pull a little bit out of ClickBid, trying not to be day to day, involved on a day to day basis. Let my team really cook because they're infinitely better than I am at writing code. Like code doesn't get in the way for them. Like they love and they're good at writing code. So, I do my sketches and we do our specs and stuff like that. But then I need to have an outlet. So I said, you know what, maybe I'll get Sapling back out and let's see what happens. Well, then I immediately realized that all my code was so old that it wouldn't even run on modern servers. So I was like, well, okay, I guess that's not going to happen. But then I thought, wait a second, what if I open up ChatGPT and let's see, I don't think I have Chat. No, I don't even have it installed on my computer. But I opened up ChatGPT on my computer and I said, okay, let me just see what I can do with this. So I took a page. I took one of my, let's just say I took my functions page and it was super old school, like, nothing modern in it, which is funny because it's not even really that modern now. But um, I just select all, copy, pasted it into ChatGPT and it said, can you modernize this so it'll work on its server today? And I'm like, I'll just see what happens. And it said, this was before I knew how optimistic AI really was. It said, well, yeah, sure. And it was like, this would be fun and fantastic. I can do this. And it spit out a page and I was like, all right. I was still thinking of AI like Microsoft's Clippy back in the day. And so I just felt like, okay, this is gonna spit out something that just fails. Obviously, looking back today, yeah, it really was good stuff. I mean, I was blown away at what ChatGPT could do. So, this was like, September of 2024. So I was just taking, so I went to my admin folder and I started with, add prize, check login, custom question. And I just started opening these pages, copying it, and pasting it into Chat GPT. Eventually, I didn't even have to say, can you please modernize this? I just kept pasting it in, and Chat GPT just was like, yeah, okay, here's another one. And then it would spit it out. I would copy it out of Chat GPT, paste it back in here. And I mean, there was some work that I had to do, and obviously, I'm glad that I have some background in PHP, and I know I can read the code, and especially my old procedural code, I can look at it and go, yeah, I think this is what it needs to do, and I would do that. I also have a pretty good, knowledge set of, like DigitalOcean or AWS, and so I can set up servers and SSL and load balancing and a MySQL database. But it, I mean, I could have asked MySQL to say, help me build a plan, or I could have not MySQL. I could have asked ChatGPT, help me build a plan to get this, set up. Now that I've got all this great modernized, at least functional code, how do I put this out on DigitalOcean or, Replit or any of these tools? And you can tell I'm old school. Like a lot of people today will say they'll set it up on Vercel, Replit, Render. And I'm saying, well, no, DigitalOcean or AWS, those are my hosting environments. But Render, Replit, those are much easier to set up. Sorry, DigitalOcean. But it's, I was able to get it going with very little effort. And so here's one of the takeaways was, I'm a visionary. I'm a little bit ADHD, and I have no interest in spending a lot of time doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. I don't get excited about, oh, cool, I'm going to make this project, but I have to spend 10 hours just grinding on this thing. I'm not that kind of guy. I want the cheat codes. I want, I don't want to grind through the game. I want to just do the storyline and win it and that kind of thing. So what AI gave me the opportunity to do was just execute all of the modernization without having to spend hours upon hours upon hours going through and search and replace, and then, oh, didn't mean to search and replace that, or all this stuff. It was like what would have happened had AI not been available, or if ChatGPT hadn't done the job. I just wouldn't have done it. I would have moved on to something else. Who knows what else I would have moved on to, but I wouldn't have taken this project and modernized it. So I think there are a lot of opportunities for people like me who are a little bit ADHD and don't have, the patience for a lot of long-term projects to bring things forward because AI can help you do the things that you really don't want to do and you don't have the time to do. And it would be a lot of trial and error. So really, I got Sapling back. Basically, the goal was just to get it launched and to see if AI, after I started doing this, I'm like, wow, AI is really impressive. What else can AI do? So then it started to, you know, blossom, and I started to think, well, okay, well, maybe, this is not what Sapling looked like when I first started and got it back running again, just bare minimum. So I used to use a service called Braintree, and Braintree was a way to do aggregated payments and so on. This was before Stripe was even a thing. And then, Braintree deprecated that project, and they've done something else with it now. And now Stripe, we use Stripe for ClickBid, and we use their Connect platform. So I said, okay, well, I got Sapling up and running. I just can't use it for an actual fundraising event. So what I decided to do was move over to Stripe. But this is where now my skill has kind of fallen off. I don't understand the Stripe API. I mean, I can, I haven't read it, I haven't used it very much. So I thought, okay, well, let's see if we can take this is like the next step for AI is a brand new feature on an existing code base. A lot of what AI has been great at is you take an idea, you do some sketches on your Remarkable or whatever, piece of paper, you scan it or take a picture of it and say, can you build this for me? And AI will just get busy building from scratch. It'll build a React project or, whatever, and then or a Python thing and some with some views or Laravel or whatever from scratch. But what does it do with a legacy platform? There are so many legacy platforms out in the web right now that will AI really make something of it? So I said, okay, why not? I got nothing to lose. So, okay, I have a Stripe account, and I want you to take all of the Braintree stuff in my code base. So if I go back to my code base, you know, let's see, Stripe Connect, Stripe Return. These used to be Braintree Connect, Braintree Return, and there were checkouts and stuff like that had all this Braintree code, and it said, sure, I can do that, and it started chewing through it and replacing it, and it was absolutely incredible. And again, this was really before inline code editing, and it didn't really run in I use VS Code. You can see that here, and so on. And so I didn't use that. I was just pasting things, copying things out of the ChatGPT terminal or the app and putting them into my code base. And so it did it. It really got through it. It built it. Now, there were a lot of times where I would just bang my head against the wall, and it was like ChatGPT and I were just not getting along. But here's another takeaway that I got out of this was, there used to be this thing. I don't know if it's still around, but when I graduated, they were starting to do this at school, where it was this, team programming, where you'd take two programmers, sit them at a desk with a single computer. One programmer would work for about an hour, and the other one would look over their shoulder, and then they would switch. And so the benefit was that if one person got stuck, the other person could say, yeah, sometimes you call it a council of ducks, where, somebody, at least you can bounce ideas off of somebody. If you're not just sitting in a room by yourself, stuck for a 45-minute, banging head session trying to get this thing solved. So what I started to think was, well, AI is really that person now. So I can just say, listen, I'm stuck on this. I don't understand. Or, hey, listen, you're not getting it. I'm going to stop what you're doing. Please start over. One of the great things about, GitHub is I can tell the agent now, listen, create a new branch and build this thing that I really need you to build. Here's some specs. Ask me some questions. Let's get some clarifying stuff going. Get a project plan together, and then go do it. And a lot of times it will create nonsense. And so so I say, okay, go back to main, delete that branch, and let's start over. So sometimes, the being able to let go of things, delete it, and start over is kind of a new concept for me. I'm used to just, pushing through it, trying to figure it out, even if it's like Band-Aids and duct tape when I get it done. Whereas now it's like, no, we're just going to try this. I'm going to chew through some tokens, and we're just going to get this to a certain point. I'm going to look at it and decide, is this any good or not? If it's not, I'm just going to delete the branch, start over with a new branch, and try it again, and see if we can learn from some of those mistakes, or do I need a new context window to make this happen? I try to take it in very bite-sized chunks. So I think what AI has helped me do is have a very experienced, very smart programmer that sits next to me to answer some of these questions and to do a lot of the work for me so that I don't have to. I've paid my dues, I've done my time, I've written my legacy code that, and had to, do search and replace for 3 hours trying to update something. I've done that. I can hand it off comfortably to Claude or ChatGPT or Cursor or whatever. That kind of stuff I'm happy with. But it's also important to note that I also don't look at these agents as like all knowing. I mean, yeah, they make mistakes and they completely go off base and they do weird stuff that I'm like, stop, but go back. But in my experience as a software developer or help working with software developers, the same things happens there. Sometimes I'll get an update to a feature that I specced out on my tablet or paper, and I'll hand it off to the developer and I'll get it back and I'm like, what is this? Like, wow, we need to relook at this and say, clearly I'm not communicating very well and they didn't hear me very well. And, now we've got this thing we got to figure out. So AI doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be as good as me. And better in other areas, but really I don't need AI to be, the world grand champion of programming. I just need it to be able to work with me to do the things that I don't want to put the time into. I'd rather put my time into new features and, marketing or promotion. So I can give that to my AI assistant, knowing and planning that it's going to make a lot of mistakes. Anyway, so that was a big takeaway for me. And I think a lot of people get tripped up on that. They expect to just throw in a couple of sentences and get this wonderful project. And it's like, no, that's not going to happen. You still have to work with it like you would work with any other programmer. And so and it's going to make a lot of mistakes. So, if you have the luxury and the benefit of having real people who are that skilled, that's great. If you don't have that resource, then AI can be a stopgap until you can get to the point where you can have incredibly seasoned, really good programmers that you can bring on staff to really make your project, go to the next level. And then they can use AI the way they see fit. And really, that is the true unlock. Is if you're a really good programmer, you understand all the code base, you understand all that stuff, you understand how to write really clean, OOP code. Then AI and you can be unstoppable. Anyway, so if we fast forward, that was kind of a lot of learning in the winter, around the new year, and then Claude comes out in early this year, and it now does this thing called Claude Code, and it's a command line. Now I've never been a real big fan of command line, so like I've got the command lines and I can do, there's a lot of people that can, never use a mouse. They just type, and it's beautiful. But, so I just think it's funny. My dog decided to go get some water. She's an old lady. She's my girl. Anyway, I'm not a big command line person. I'm very GUI. I was a Dreamweaver user back in the day and Macromedia, what was that app? Man, I forget what it was called, but it was awesome. It was, dang it, I really wish I could remember that. That bugs me that I can't remember. It was like a combination of Photoshop and Illustrator, and then Adobe bought it and so on. But so I was always very GUI driven and UI driven, but now Claude Code comes out and it's got this code where you can run it in your command line. And so I was like, I don't know, it's not really my thing. I really wish it had a UI like, ChatGPT does, but I don't have, I'll figure it out when I get to it. And so, what I thought was, well, okay, I'm going to build this. I'm going to try it out. So we went on vacation in June, and then I had this big spec for a new project that I wanted to build. I'm not even going to go into what the project was. It was just a silly thing. And I had a lot of downtime on vacation, and I had my laptop connected to the internet, and Claude had just come out with this Max program where you could get Claude Code, command line tools, all that stuff. And then I'm like, all right, let's give this a shot. Let's see so I took this massive, it was all about the context. Build this huge context, put guardrails, and let the AI just go. So it was probably like a 4-page context of what I wanted. It had, sample database schema, all that stuff. I put a lot of time into it. I'd even used Claude and ChatGPT to help me like improve it so it was even more robust and stuff like that. And needless to say, it did not work. I mean, Claude was very ambitious. It got started. It just didn't make anything meaningful. It didn't work. I couldn't launch it. I couldn't even test it. It was so buggy and completely off the rails that at the end of that, I thought, yeah, we are definitely nowhere near agentic coding because you can't rely on it. I mean, it's just, even a junior programmer would follow directions better than this. But it was great to learn. It was great to know that, okay, it can do some things like, taking an old legacy PHP file and modernizing it. That's pretty basic. I could give that to anybody and they could, follow a guide and make it happen. And AI just kind of made that easier for me. But actually starting out from scratch on a new project, forget it. It wasn't going to work. And so I went back to Sapling and I thought, well, okay, I've got my boundaries now. I know what I can build and what I can't build. So I started I started to say, okay, how do I build a process to, let me go back to BS. How do I build a process so that I can actually use this stuff and not bang my head against the wall and get so lost in the weeds that I just can't use it and I just get so frustrated I give up. So obviously, my repo here is connected to GitHub. And GitHub obviously is a great versioning platform. It's great for maintaining old code. If you get stuck, it's got rewind capability. All these things. It's perfect for a lot of trial and error and experimentation. So I did sign up. Like I said, I got Claude Code and I connected it. I thought this is pretty cool. And now I've got a chat window, so I can just chat with Claude Code and ask it to do things. So I said, all right, I'm still building these big context things in like a Word document or Google Docs. I'm passing those like, hey, ChatGPT, this is going to be a prompt for Claude Code. Can you help me clean this up? And it's kind of like using a competitor and all that stuff. And so anyway, I was building all these big context windows. And so then I started to learn about how, context only has so many tokens. And once it runs out of tokens, it does a summarization. The summarization is hit or miss. You really can't control it. I mean, you can a little bit if you want to spend the time, but people are lazy like myself and they don't. They just let Claude summarize. And then it summarizes some goofy thing, starts a new context window, and poof, we're hosed. Like this isn't working. So what we started to learn was you need to interrupt Claude, you need to stop it, you need to set up brand new context windows, you need to create what are called agents. And agents are, I've done some of this. If you go to your Claude folder and you go to agents, I've got a MySQL, a PHP agent, and a UX UI agent. And then what's nice about that is that Claude will take the original context that you said or that you put in there, and it'll pass it off to different agents, and each agent gets its own context window. So when it's done, it takes a summary of what it did, brings it back to the parent context window, so it uses less of that window, so you don't run out of context as fast as you used to. To me, that's a little bit hit or miss. What's really interesting about Claude is that you have to tell it almost every time, please use agents. And even then, context doesn't, or AIs don't always follow that advice. Another big takeaway for me is spending, 20 some years as a developer. It's very black and white. Like you code something and it works or it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, there's a bug. The bug tells you what happened. You fix the bug. It starts to work. You want it to do something different. Okay, I'm going to change the code and then it's going to work or it's not going to work. So, and if I put this code in there, it will absolutely every single time execute that code the exact same way. As long as I, keep it clean and I put in the right parameters and I, trap for all that stuff. But with AI, it is completely different. If AI were a programming language, it's just suggestive. Hey, I need you to build this new feature. I want you to use agents. It's not like I can in Claude Code I can say agents equal true, and now I know that from now on, without a fail, every single time, no exceptions, it'll use agents. You have to suggest it. When you build these context windows, it's crazy. Like, you are a senior database architect with 15 years experience. Like, in my mind as a programmer, like, why 15? Why not 17? Why not 14? Why not 21? Why not 150? Like, let's go crazy, right? Like it's gonna, and if I put 150, does that mean it's gonna be better? Like, what is the point of this? It just, you're a MySQL MariaDB optimization for high traffic. Oh, thank God I put high traffic. What if I put low traffic? You know what I mean? Does it really matter? Like, and then there's these, so here's some templates and stuff, and then there's these rules that you can put in here. So find maybe they're not even in here, which is funny. I always laugh when I see these rules. Do not do this. Do not do that. Oh, explain analysis for complex queries. Like, is it always going to do this? Not always. And sometimes it says, oh, I just, and you tell it like, hey, Claude, you didn't do this, and it's like, oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. I'm so sorry. Let me do that for you now. And you're like, so as a programmer that's used to very, you know, this has to happen this way, and it's always going to happen this way because I wrote it that way. Using AI in prompt engineering is really exhausting sometimes because you're just like, oh my gosh, I thought I told you to do this, and then it says, well, I compacted the conversation and I didn't compact that part of it. I only kept this part of it, and so now we're often off running on something else. And if you're not paying attention to the prompt results or the statuses that it's giving you, you load your page and it's like, what just happened? So that's why creating new branches, I always say, it's not here, but I always have a second terminal running, and I always create my own branches. If there's something that it has to happen without fail, I'll often do it in the command line myself so that I don't get halfway down this rabbit hole with Claude and realize, oh my gosh, I can't come back because it didn't do what I said it should do. It just decided not to. It skipped it. So, when there is a certain, this is where, something that does concern me about AI is that I have a certain, I have a certain set of skills um, that I've acquired through, gosh, I sound like Liam Neeson, from 20 some years of developing. If I didn't have that 20 some years of developing, I wouldn't know to set up a terminal window and create my own branches or create my own, I don't know, commits, or create my own, testing scenarios, because it would just be, it would just be, I just wouldn't know. And so I worry sometimes about how junior developers are going to become senior developers with the ability to use AI as an absolute expert. I worry about that gap because there's not real, AI is removing that entry level, that early development stage of programming. And so we have to have tools and resources for them to pick up that stuff. And so, but with AI being, again, suggestive, sometimes I have to do things in here that are very absolute. Like, I need a branch, I need, this database, I need this environment variable, I need this and this and this. And so then I can, now what I started to do in the summer was, I said, okay, obviously I've seen what happens when you try to build these really big context windows. It just goes crazy. So I started to say, listen, here's what I want in Sapling. I want to pivot Sapling, and I want it to be a video first platform, because before all it was you'd upload some pictures, you'd write some content. You can even see, here's the display copy. Well, this isn't even used anymore because everything in Sapling is video. I want it to be, feed based instead of photo. And, like I wrote some content 3 weeks ago and it's still sitting there. No, I want this to be like, I want to be able to update videos as it happens. Like today, my son has a field trip to an apple orchard. I'm going to record a couple quick videos and put them on my fundraising feed. And so, that's how I want Sapling to be used, as more of a current, as it happens, real life experience to raise money for whatever you're raising money for. So so we started to pivot that. So I'm like, that's a big undertaking. So how am I going to do this, with AI, so it doesn't just go completely off the rails? So I create these really small bite-sized chunks. And so I go into Claude. Now, this is how I use it. I'm not saying this is how you should use it. You might have seen, if you've used Claude a lot, and I've really transitioned to Claude. ChatGPT has its value. I'm not digging on one or the other. I just prefer Claude. You'll notice I have a skills folder. So yeah, I am using the new skills tools and things like that. But really, really, if you just stay in the main context window and you keep your feature requests really small, it does an exceptionally good job, especially with Sonnet 4.5, which I'll talk about in just a second. So I'll say, listen, I need to pivot this thing to videos right now, today, and I'll write it out. I'll say, listen, Claude, we need to do some changes to the platform. I want to be able to upload videos to a service called Mux. Can you help me set up a connection to Mux in the platform? I'm going to put my credentials in the environment, and then let's just get started on that, and then it'll chew through that, and it won't burn through the entire context window because it's just going to do that one little thing. And then it does it, and then I say, can you commit and push this to GitHub? Then I go to GitHub and I do a compare between main and in GitHub. I guess I can show you. Let's do GitHub. Let's see what we got here. And so Sapling. Usually it tells me if I go to branches and I don't know what I'm working on right now. Yeah, desktop side by side, and it's going to tell me that commits ahead. So if I want to do a compare, what it'll do is it'll tell me, okay, I got 6 files changed, and what I want to take a look at is, okay, how did it come up with what it did. Sorry, I looked at a password, and in my mind I'm thinking, should I show that? And it's just a local. Yeah. Anyway, so I look and I think, okay, so it created some styles in this. This is the current commit, but it'll say, okay, I created a bunch of styles. That's fine. I don't care about any of that. That's not destructive. Then I'm like, oh, well, we created a desktop wrapper, and okay, now we're doing. So I start looking at it, and I'm like, I can see exactly what Claude wrote. Did it really go off the rails and create something that is just ridiculous? Because if it did, then what I can do is come back to VS Code and say, please check out master and delete the branch that you're on right now. We're going to start over. And so it does it. It doesn't complain, doesn't give me an attitude. It says, well, maybe if you'd said this better, I would have done a better job. It does. Now I'm like, okay, let's start over. I set a new context window, and then I give it more basic prompts, and we just kind of take it piece by piece. And that has been incredible. Now, interestingly, a lot of people say there's this AI slop out there. And when I look at GitHub, I'm like, okay, well, if there is a lot of AI slop, I'm going to find it. And I'm going to look at this code, and I'm going to see, okay, so, maybe there is. And I start looking through this, and I think, okay, well, maybe I could have done this better. But really, I mean, let's face it, if you had seen the original Sapling, that is the absolute sloppiest code. Like the original ClickBit, the original Sapling. Like I wrote some messed up code, and I was able to get down the road far enough until I could bring on a real programmer to make it better. I have great real programmers now that are going to make exceptionally good code, but it didn't start out that way. And so I think that's what we're looking at with, agentic coding is, I need this to function, and I need to prove a concept. And then eventually, yes, if I try to go to hit scale, I am going to need these resources to make it better, but I'm not at scale right now. So anyway, when Sonnet 4.5 came out, it created an enormous unlock. In fact, Sonnet 4.5 has a lot more, I don't know. It's just a better language model. It's been trained on, more in depth on programming languages and programming concepts. And it's fixed a lot of that drift problem. So, Claude originally, when I wrote my project back in June, one of the problems with this thing that just turned my project that I wrote this big context into crap was that it just drifted so much, and it was doing all these things that I didn't even ask it to do. But when Sonnet 4.5 came out, it has these kind of checkpoints that it uses on its own that I don't have to employ to to stop itself and to stay on context, to remind itself what it's supposed to be doing. It creates a project plan and sticks to it. So that 15 minutes down the road, it's not like, oh, cool, now I'm off, chasing squirrels. It's actually staying on track. So much so that I said, okay, here's the thing. I'm going to go back to that original prompt that I gave back in June that just took me off the rails. I'm just going to take that prompt. I'm not going to change a thing. I'm going to go to Sonnet 4.5 and I'm just going to give it to that. And I'm going to say, please build this now. And it did a remarkable job. It was so much better. It stayed on track. I think it worked for like 45 minutes to build this thing that I wanted. And was it perfect? No, we had some issues. I had to go back and ask for some clarifications. But what was even better was that I could just get in the zone and I didn't have to worry about context windows. I didn't have to worry about compression. I didn't have to worry about, skills. I didn't have to worry about, agents. I just had a continual conversation with Claude and it just kept going. Like even when it did compact a conversation, it kept everything going strong for me enough that I didn't have to be like, I should have created an agent for this, or I should have done this. I should have created all these like command, slash commands and all this. I was just able to just freewheel this thing and go for it. And it created some really great stuff. So that has been a huge game changer for me is the Sonnet 4.5, even better than Opus. Um, so, today, what I'm doing is again, like I said, I'm asking Claude to do these things where, I wanted to build some AI tools, and I said, okay, so I heard VO has some really cool stuff where you can generate AI videos, and so as a 48-year-old, it is kind of goofy. Like, why would I have AI build? Like, if I go to StreamCause is my local dev, and if I let's see if let's go to videos. I have some AI generated videos here, and I thought, okay, but it's cool. I love how AI is helping people do things differently, and I want to give people the option. Like, if you want to upload a reference photo and then tell it to make an AI video instead of doing one for yourself, then great. I think that's wonderful. So what I'm gonna, like for instance, when I built this, I said, okay, I need you to create an animation style because I want all my videos to be animated. I don't want anybody, I don't want to find out that somebody's trying to bring back Martin Luther King to do a promotion for their fundraiser. I just don't want that. So everything has to be animated. And I told Claude, I said, okay, one of the little tasks that I gave it was just give me a drop down of different animation styles. I did a quick Google search and it gave me like 5 or 6. So I just asked Claude to do it and it created this animation style drop down, low poly, papercraft. Like, and I said, okay, well, what does papercraft mean? Can you help me explain this to people when they choose something? And so it says, oh, cool. It says folded paper look, Kubo and the two strings. So if you've seen that movie, you're like, oh, that's what it's going to look like. And so then again, you can't choose photorealistic. Not going to happen. I just don't want it. I do let you upload a reference image if you want to pass in a reference image. Then I let you create a visual description of, teacher in a classroom for a school fundraiser, someone on a soccer field if it's for a sports thing. And just so that you can't do something obscene or inappropriate, I pass this through a OpenAI. It's got a language model that's built specifically for filtering out, inappropriate content. And so it passes this prompt through that first to see, because obviously I don't want to find out that somebody's promoting something that's just crazy. And then you have a script. You just give it a script and then click generate. This thing was built completely with AI. I didn't write a single line of code. I looked at every line of code to make sure it was written in what I thought looked right. But I also didn't do it in one go. I said, okay, I need you to write a visual description. I need you to help me with a visual description. I need to build the page. I drew up a sketch of what I wanted on my notepad. And then it built this and I took a look at it. I'm like, all right, this is good. Now let's take it to the next step. Now let's take it to the next step. What I'm not doing today, and some people are effectively, but for me, I'm not saying, here is the entire feature, go build it and let's see what we get. That feels to me a little bit like rolling the dice and you get so much code that it's really hard to put it all together in your head to see if it's functional. Instead, I'm like, I need a pop-up window that lets you build an AI-generated video. The same thing was, when I generated AI content. If I want to create an email to help me raise money for my school, I built this kind of thing that I learned back in some of my marketing education days, where it was like, I need to convince donors that something because something. And what do I want it to be? An email, a tweet, blog, whatever. And what kind of voice do I want? So again, this creates guardrails so that you don't create something just completely random and inappropriate, but it does allow you to think about how you're going to communicate with your donors. And so I said, okay, Claude, I need you to help me. I want a side by side window of previously generated content in the builder. And then I want this form. So it builds the form, doesn't wire anything up. And then I'm like, all right, cool. Now let's wire it up to, um, I'm using Claude in this project. So it wires it up to Claude, calls out to the AI, you know, make sure it's appropriate and not crazy, and then gives me back a response. And so sometimes it does a good job. Sometimes and so I can back up. And if you're diligent and you stay focused on this, GitHub branch didn't work, delete the branch, start over. You don't ever lose anything, because some people say, well, what if Claude went rogue and just issued a delete command and got rid of all of your software? Well, that's okay, because now you can just pull it back down from GitHub. And so, and you can you can have backups on, or you can set guardrails so that it can't run these delete commands. So there's some options that you have there. But, you know, what's really exciting about Claude today is that it's really helping me accelerate my ideas. So the next idea that I have is going to be a big, big expansion of the platform, in that if you'll notice, when you set up your Sapling account, you can't create 3, 4, 5 pages. So like right now, it's this. If you went to testing.streamcause.com, this is what you would get. And this is a feature I added this week where I put my comments side by side with the video if you're looking at it on a desktop. And so, once you're on mobile, it reduces it. This actually, I had to burn a bunch of branches before this got it right. But finally it did, and I'm pretty happy with it. But the next thing I want to do is let you create multiple accounts. I want, testing, testing 2, testing 3, testing 4, and you be able to, as an organization, manage those under some new tab called projects or campaigns. And then that's kind of a parent that then takes you into an admin with um, each individual account. So how am I going to pull that off? Like, that's a massive development undertaking. So what I am going to do is I'm going to go to Claude's planning mode, and I'm going to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. How would you break this down into small projects that you and I can work on together so that I can watch your progress and double check to make sure everything's coming together? I'm actually going to use Claude to help me break it down into smaller chunks that I can use to keep Claude on track. So it's actually going to be really helpful to make that happen. It'll plan it out. What I'll probably do is copy that out. Just again, some of my old school coming out. Copy that into a Sublime file so that I can just hang on to it. And then I'm going to clear the context, and I'm going to say, okay, we're going to get started on this new project. Here's step 1, do that. And it's probably just going to be examine and build a database architecture. And it's going to go do that. And then I'm going to be able to look at it and see that it did it effectively. And so over the course of this will probably take a couple of days to make this really work and become effective. But it's allowing me as a solo developer to build this new feature. Can this handle 25,000 nonprofits at one time? That would be a stretch. It's scalable, thankfully, but would I eventually need to bring on resources that have expertise? Yes. Do I think that AI is going to replace all those people? No. I think AI is going to make people more productive. And so when you bring on a DevOps person, if they have the ability and the experience to use AI to make some of their job easier and more efficient, that's great. I just don't think it's going to be, okay, cool, Bob, Sally, I don't need you anymore because now you're just going to I'm going to have AI do this. We're not there. And frankly, I don't know that we'll ever be there. Who knows if AI is going to plateau, if there's only so much a language model can learn, and then it just kind of levels off. But it is a powerful, powerful tool. Hopefully, by what you're seeing here and what I've built, or Claude's built, with some of my prompts, that you can see there are some really good capabilities for people like myself to explore new concepts without having all the modern knowledge of AI and or APIs and programming languages and so on. So anyway, hopefully that was helpful. Certainly cathartic for me, so I could get this out there. But all right, well, thanks, and see you soon.